Imagine this. It's the 1960s. The Cold War is raging. Everyone is terrified of nuclear annihilation. The world is divided. And suddenly, the United States announced they're going to the moon, which is bold, because most people today can't even get to the airport on time.
And even bolder when you realize the rockets were designed by former Nazis. One of the founders of modern rocketry was doing sex magic in the desert. And at one point, humanity decided the best way to understand space was to nuke it.
Yes, today we are talking about NASA, the space agency, the heroes, the explorers, the people who gave us moon landings, space telescopes, and that one photo of Earth that makes everyone cry and want to recycle for about 4 days.
Also, the organization that came out of Cold War paranoia, military strategy, secret programs, and a very uncomfortable recruitment drive involving former members of the Third Reich.
And if that wasn't enough, there are occultists, secret societies, strange symbolism, founders' tombstones that flat earthers absolutely love, radiation belts that could theoretically cook astronauts like rotisserie chickens, and the small detail that we somehow went to the moon in 1969, and then apparently misplaced the instruction manual.
We literally lost the technology. That's like building the pyramids and then going, sorry lads, forgot how we did that. Let's just do bungalows now.
And before anyone starts yelling at their phones, we are going to do this properly. Today, it's not just conspiracy, it's facts, context, history, and then some of the conspiracies. Because the truth about NASA is actually far more interesting than either side wants you to believe.
We're talking about where NASA really came from, the military roots before it even existed, how Nazi engineers helped shape the space race, the occult side of early rocketry, why we blasted nuclear weapons into the upper atmosphere, and the big one.
Why haven't we gone back to the moon in over 50 years?
And is the answer boring, terrifying, or just bureaucratic?
So strap in, adjust your tinfoil hats, and if you're a flat earther, maybe don't throw your phone just yet, because some of these will make you very, very happy.
This is Mindzilla.
Let's get to it. Alright, before we start what most people think they know about NASA, because if you ask the average person, they'll tell you something like NASA was created to explore space, push human knowledge forward, and inspire generations.
Yes, wholesome, educational, beautiful. Men floating around in zero gravity while eating mashed potatoes out a tube.
Exactly. The public image is science, curiosity, and peaceful exploration. It's Carl Sagan staring dramatically into the universe. It's astronauts waving from space. It's that emotional music that makes you feel like humanity might actually have a chance.
And to be fair, there is truth in that. NASA has done genuinely incredible things. Satellites, climate research, planetary science, medical tech, the International Space Station. Without them, we wouldn't have GPS, weather forecasting, the ability to track Jess when she's just pretending to pop out for milk.
But here's the thing, that story is only part of the picture, because NASA didn't just appear out of nowhere as a peaceful science organization. It was born in one of the most paranoid, dangerous, and politically tense periods in modern history.
The Cold War, which, if you don't know, was basically decades of two superpowers staring at each other while quietly building enough weapons to end the world several times over.
And space was not just about curiosity, it was about power. Whoever controlled space could control communication, surveillance, and missile delivery. Rockets that could reach the moon could also reach your enemies.
So when you hear space race, Don't imagine two nerds in lab coats having a friendly competition. Imagine two drunk bodybuilders in a car park, both holding nuclear weapons and shouting, "Go on then."
In 1957, the Soviet Union launched Sputnik, a tiny metal sphere with a radio transmitter. But psychologically, it was massive. It meant the Soviets could launch objects into space, which meant they could potentially drop nuclear warheads anywhere on Earth.
And the United States absolutely panicked. Politicians, military leaders, and intelligence agencies suddenly realized they might be behind, and being second in the Cold War was not an option.
So, in 1958, the US government created NASA. It wasn't just about exploration, it was about survival, dominance, and technological superiority.
It was also about propaganda. Because if you can show the world you've put a man on the moon, you've basically won the biggest PR battle in human history.
So, yes, NASA was about science, but it was also about military strategy and global influence. And that's why, to really understand NASA, we need to go back even further.
Because before NASA, there was another organization, less famous, less glamorous, much more connected to the military.
And that organization laid the foundation for everything that came next.
Which brings us to the mysterious, slightly boring sounding but extremely important NACA.
And trust us, this is where things start getting very interesting. So, before NASA and inspirational posters in science classrooms, there was something called the National Advisory Committee for Aeronautics, which sounds less like a space agency and more like a group of men who meet once a year to argue about staplers.
It generally sounds like the world's most boring committee. You imagine biscuits, weak tea, and someone saying, "Now, Gerald, we mustn't rush into this whole flying thing."
But NACA was anything but boring. It was founded in 1915 during World War I, when governments realized something very important. Whoever controlled the skies controlled the battlefield.
So this wasn't about stars and wonder, it was about war. Planes were becoming faster, deadlier, and more strategic. And the United States wanted to catch up with Europe, who were already deep into aerial combat.
NACA's job was simple: research aviation technology, improve aircraft, increase speed, extend range, and crucially, make them more effective in combat.
Translation: how do we build machines that can travel further, faster, and drop things on people more effectively?
Exactly. This was the early 20th century version of arms race, and NACA became deeply embedded with the military. They worked closely with the Army, the Navy, and later the Air Force. Their research was not public curiosity, it was national security.
And this matters because when NASA was created, it didn't replace that mindset, it inherited it.
That's the key point. NASA was built on top of an existing structure that was already connected to defense, intelligence, and warfare. Then rockets that would later go to space came from the same technological family as ballistic missiles.
So when people say, "Why does NASA work with the military?" The answer is because they always have, from day one.
During World War II, NACA ramped up his research dramatically. High-speed aircraft, jet propulsion, advanced aerodynamics, and by the end of the war, the focus was shifting towards something even more powerful.
Rockets. Long range rockets.
Because if you can send a rocket across the atmosphere, you don't need planes. You can strike anywhere, and suddenly, space was no longer just a dream, it was the next battlefield.
And this is where things start getting uncomfortable because after World War II, the United States realized something.
The Germans had made enormous progress in rocket technology, far ahead of anyone else.
Which is not a fun thing to discover. It's like finding out your enemy has invented Wi Fi while you're still sending letters by pigeon.
The V-2 rocket was the world's first long-range guided ballistic missile. It could travel faster than the speed of sound. It could not be intercepted. It terrified entire cities.
But it was also built using forced labor. Thousands of prisoners died constructing them, so the technology came with a very dark history.
And when the war ended, both the United States and the Soviet Union rushed to capture that knowledge. Not just the rockets, the scientists.
Because whoever got those scientists would control the future of warfare.
So NACA's world suddenly merged with intelligence agencies, military strategy, and secret recruitment programs. The line between science and national security became even blurrier.
And this is the moment where the wholesome story of space exploration begins to fracture.
Because instead of starting fresh, the United States made a very controversial decision, one that would shape NASA forever.
They didn't just study the German technology.
They brought the people who built it to America.
And that brings us to one of the strangest, most morally complicated, and frankly cinematic chapters in modern history.
Operation Paperclip.
It sounds like office stationery, but what was actually a secret program to recruit former Nazi scientists. If you have been with us for a while, we have discussed this project in more detail in one of our CIA project episodes.
That's right. Some of them would become the faces of American innovation, including the space program.
Including the man who would help put humans on the moon.
The most famous example is Werner von Braun, who would later lead the development of Saturn V rocket.
Which means the rocket that took humans to the moon came from technology officially designed for war.
Now, here's the important part. This was not unique to the US. The Soviets did exactly the same thing. It was a race for knowledge, and neither side was willing to fall behind.
The space race wasn't just science, it was fear, it was power, it was survival.
And this is where the official, clean story of space exploration starts to get complicated. NASA was shaped by people with very controversial pasts.
But here's where things get truly strange, because while some of the early pioneers of rocketry came from military and war backgrounds, others came from somewhere completely different.
Not from the battlefield, from the occult.
And this part sounds made up. If this were in a movie, you'd say it was too much.
But it's real. One of the founders of American rocket science believed in ritual magic, secret societies, and opening portals to other dimensions.
Which raises the obvious question. Who exactly were the people building the foundations of modern space travel?
And that's where we meet one of the most bizarre figures in the history of science, Jack Parsons. And trust us, this is where NASA's story gets bizarre. He is one of the co-founders of the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, a brilliant engineer, a visionary, and a practice occultist.
Which sounds like the worst possible combination for government work. Yes, we need someone who can calculate thrust ratios and also summon demons in his backyard.
Exactly. Parsons was obsessed with ritual magic, secret societies, and Aleister Crowley. He practiced telema, a belief system that, in his hands, included sex magic and elaborate ceremonies he believed could change reality.
And just to clarify, he was doing this while working on rockets for the US government. Imagine your lab partner chanting in rows while testing propellant.
It gets weirder. Parsons had a friendship and sometimes business partnership with L. Ron Hubbard. Yes, the man who would later start Scientology. Together, they conducted magical rituals in Pasadena that, according to accounts, aim to manifest the moon goddess and accelerate Parsons' rocketry goals.
So let me get this straight. NASA, secretly military adjacent, now has a lead engineer who's also trying to summon lunar deities. And the US government is just watching.
Pretty much. And Parsons wasn't some fringe weirdo. His rocketry work was cutting edge. He pioneered solid fuel rockets, tested propulsion, and literally laid the groundwork for the space race. The rockets that would eventually carry humans to space owe a debt to his genius.
And also to his rituals somehow.
Exactly. People at the time, scientists and engineers, noticed it was eccentric, yes, but they tolerated this because it could make rockets fly, which is fair. If your rocket launches, who cares if the engineer is wearing a ceremonial robe?
Meanwhile, Parsons is probably imagining the Saturn V as a pentagram in the sky.
And here's where it gets cinematic. Parsons' life ended tragically in 1952. He died in an explosion in his home laboratory. Officially an accident with volatile chemicals, but given his life, his rituals, his network, conspiracy theorists have had a field day ever since.
Which is the perfect storm for mythology. Military contracts, occultism, genius, mysterious death, mix that with Cold War paranoia and sprinkle in Nazis. And suddenly NASA looks like a gothic horror story disguised as a science agency.
Exactly. And Parsons' influence didn't vanish with his death. He shaped JPL. He shaped early rocketry culture, and some argue his magical experiments, his obsession with the unknown, still echo in NASA's obsession with symbolism, cryptic mission names, and, well, the occasional weird ceremonial tombstone.
Ah, yes, tombstones. The part that flat earthers love because nothing says we're hiding secrets from you like a bunch of mysterious engravings on rocks outside a lab.
But more on that in a bit. First, let's appreciate the absurdity. One man simultaneously pushing the limits of physics and the limits of metaphysics. And the government saying, cool, just don't blow up Los Angeles.
Meanwhile, the public just thinks NASA is all spreadsheets, calculators, and clean shaven astronauts smiling in zero gravity.
And that's why, if you ever felt like there is something off about the space program, Jack Parsons is probably your first clue.
Or maybe the second, after the Nazis.
Either way, things are about to get stranger, because Parson isn't the only weird thread in NASA's tapestry. Next, we look at the symbolic tombstones, the hidden messages, and why some flat earthers get a little too excited when they see them.
Gravestones, rocks, tombstones, some found outside NASA facilities.
Especially the one for Warner Van Braun's tombstone. Psalm 19:1, which reads, and I quote, "The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament sheweth his handiwork." Apparently, the inscriptions are poetic enough that some flat earthers see it as confirmation of the firmament. Yes, the man who built the Saturn V is now considered the prophet of the dome.
Because nothing says global conspiracy confirmed like a space pioneer's tombstone using the word firmament. Apparently, triangles, celestial motifs, and Latin phrases equal hard evidence of a flat, enclosed sky.
To be fair, the tombstone psalm is definitely an interesting choice, and when you combine it with flat earther logic, suddenly it's like Van Braun is sending messages from beyond the grave, or exposing the whole thing.
And if you think that's weird, there's more. Many of NASA's older facilities, like Jet Propulsion Laboratory and Langley, have commemorative plaques and stones. These mark donors, historic events, and achievements.
Which is normal until you notice the symbols. Geometric patterns, stars, triangles, iconography that look suspicious if you're already primed to see conspiracy everywhere.
Enter our brief NASA's Secret Symbolism Skeptic Explainer.
Number 1. Most stones in plaque mark rocket tests, satellite launches, or solid fuel milestones.
Number 2. Symbols like triangles, circles, and stars were common in early 20th century engineering. Fraternal orders and scientific diagrams, a triangle on a stone is usually just a triangle.
Number 3. Some designs include astrological or planetary motifs. Back then, space exploration was as much art as science.
Number 4. Flat earthers ignore the context. They see triangle stars and Latin phrases, and suddenly it's proof the government is hiding the edges of the world.
But now combine that with Jack Parsons' occult influence, the military secrecy, and Van Braun's firmament confirming tombstone, and suddenly NASA's memorials feel like breadcrumbs in a gothic horror story.
And the strangest part? Some of these stones commemorate secretive projects or experimental milestones, stuff that wasn't public knowledge at the time, which easily fuels speculation that NASA was always more secretive than they let on.
So, whether you think these stones are innocent commemorations, occult echoes, or hidden messages from the past, they're undeniably creepy. And in the case of Von Braun's tombstone, they've given a whole community a reason to cheer.
And now we move from stones to something even more radioactive. The Van Allen belts, nuclear experiments, and why humans haven't returned to the moon.
Because some secrets are carved in stone, and some are glowing in space.
Literally.
Alright, let's talk about the part of space that makes every astronaut say, maybe not today, thanks. The Van Allen radiation belts.
Named after James Van Allen, who discovered them in 1958. Basically, two enormous donuts of charged particles surrounding the Earth, radiation levels high enough to fry unshielded electronics or humans.
Yes, think of them as cosmic toaster ovens. And NASA, in its infinite wisdom, decided people should pass right through them.
Which is like walking through a nuclear spa without sunscreen.
The belts are trapped by Earth's magnetic field. The inner belt is mostly protons, the outer belt is electrons. Both spin at terrifying speeds, and during Apollo, astronauts passed through them in less than an hour.
Engineers calculated the exposure, it was survivable. With shielding and speed, but conspiracy theorists have had a field day ever since.
Yes, because if you dive into the Apollo mission timelines, you can claim no one could ever survive that. Cue the flat earth, and it was filmed in Burbank theories.
Which brings us to another delightful moment in history. Starfish Prime.
Starfish Prime, July 9, 1962. Don't let the name fool you. Not a sports match. A high-altitude nuclear test. A 1.4 megaton bomb detonated 400 kilometers above the Pacific. It was part of Operation Fishbowl, which itself was a subset of the larger Operation Dominic series that we are not getting into today.
Yes. The most relevant thing for this episode is that the US literally nuked space to see what would happen.
The result? Artificial radiation belts formed temporarily, satellites fried, electrical grids disrupted, and a whole lot of electrons went flying around Earth like confetti at a cosmic parade.
So, just to recap, we discovered natural radiation belts, we nuked the surrounding space for science, and then we sent humans through them.
Apparently, and while this was done for military research, electromagnetic pulse effects, satellite resilience, and Cold War dominance, it also created a convenient "we really shouldn't send people back through this" excuse, even though we did 7 years later.
Which leads us nicely into the bigger question. Why haven't humans returned to the moon in 50 plus years?
Their explanation is cost and politics, and also radiation. If the Van Allen belts are dangerous now, imagine in the 1960s, when shielding was just barely adequate. And Starfish Prime? That temporary altered space radiation in ways that complicated planning for future missions, but not the one 7 years later.
It's like trying to plan a picnic while someone has set off a series of invisible space fireworks over your table.
Combine that with military secrecy, experimental rocket tech from former Nazis, occultists shaping the culture, and flat earther approved tombstones, and suddenly it feels less like a science program and more like a gothic horror adventure.
And that's exactly the kind of context NASA never really sells in glossy PR videos.
This is their explanation on why. After 1972, humans didn't rush back to the moon. It wasn't just politics and budgets. It was radiation belts, clear side effects, and maybe a little existential terror.
In other words, the moon isn't just far, it's dangerous. And we know too much now to just send people on a casual joyride.
So the next time someone asks why we haven't returned to the moon, just say we nuked space and the Van Allen belts were dormant from radiation for years after the nukes, but now they are watching.
And maybe add also Werner von Braun's tombstone is judging us.
Which brings us to the next section, the moon itself, the Artemis program, and the lingering mysteries that make people question whether we really went there and why going back is suddenly so complicated. So let's circle back to the big question. If humans go to the moon in the late 60s and early 70s, then radio silence, what happened?
The official explanation is budget cuts, and politics are part of it. Radiation belts are definitely part of that, but there's a whole ecosystem of fringe ideas online that has grown up around why we don't go back, and some of them are wild.
One of the biggest viral beliefs recently is the idea that the Earth itself will temporarily lose its gravity in August 2026. People online are absolutely convinced this is legit.
Yes, the rumor claims that on August the 12th, 2026, Earth will experience 7 seconds of no gravity. 7 whole seconds, where everything floats free, and that some secret program called Project Anchor has been quietly preparing for it.
The story has all the ingredients a conspiracy loves: a specific date, a sinister sounding NASA project, precise casualty figures, and even a massive budget to make it sound official. Some posts even say 40 to 60 million people will die because of the temporary zero G.
People on forums have mapped out exactly what will happen. Objects rising 15 to 20 meters into the air, chaos ensues, infrastructure collapses, economic apocalypse, etc.
NASA, and literally every physicist you can imagine has debunked this. You can't just flip gravity off for 7 seconds. Gravity is tied to the Earth's mass. If you suddenly lost gravity, you'd have lost most of the planet itself.
To put it in layman's terms, gravity isn't a switch you can turn off like a light bulb. And even the idea of gravitational waves cancelling gravity, that's scientifically insane according to the scientists. Those waves are so weak we only detect them with mega expensive instruments. They don't cause anything dramatic to the Earth.
The rumor attached itself to a real event, a total solar eclipse on August 12th, 2026. It might be the reason this spread like wildfire. Eclipse plus fear equals perfect recipe for viral panic.
Some people now think the real reasons humans haven't gone back to the moon is because we learned too much. That some Apollo tech, radiation shielding breakthroughs, or even gravity knowledge has been buried on purpose.
So, when we talk about radiation belts slowing down future lunar missions or lost technological knowledge from the Apollo era, or why Artemis seems so delayed, this gravity hoax becomes part of the narrative people want to believe, because it sounds like the sort of grand reveal people think is being hidden from them.
And that's the point. NASA has publicly and repeatedly debunked the idea that Earth will lose gravity even for a microsecond on that date. There's no Project Anchor, no leaked document, and no scientific mechanism at play, according to them.
But the fact that hundreds of thousands of people believe it and share it online tells you something. There is a huge cultural appetite for secrets surrounding space, gravity, and the moon.
Which is exactly why theories about radiation hazards, lost technology, and Artemis keep evolving into deeper and stranger narratives.
Either because people genuinely fear the unknown, or because it's way more fun to imagine secret gravity toggle switches buried in the Earth's core.
So when you hear, we can't go back to the moon, remember, some of that is science, some is politics, and some of it is the wild, wonderfully weird stuff the internet creates when it's bored and looking at eclipse memes.
All right, folks, we've navigated occult rocket scientists, radiation belts, gravity rumors. Now let's take a breather and dive headfirst into some other NASA conspiracies internet has to offer.
Yes, we're going deep into the Reddit trenches and strange corners of the forums where logic goes to take a nap.
First up, the moon isn't real, like not a rock orbiting Earth, but a massive hologram projected in the sky by someone for reasons. Theories range from it's to manipulate tides to it's to control humanity's emotions. Yeah, emotions, because nothing keeps us in line like a Monday blues moon glow.
Imagine them pitch meeting for that one. Right, the moon, CGI, it's emotional, and the tides, that's vibes.
Then there is the Black Knight satellite legend. Folks swear there is a ancient alien craft orbiting Earth, possibly for 13,000 years, and NASA is covering it up. It's like the universe's oldest just chilling satellite. Find this incredibly interesting.
NASA says it's space debris, a lost thermal blanket, but I agree it sounds way cooler to believe we have extraterrestrial junk orbiting us.
Here's the quite stupid and hilarious one from the r forward slash flat earth. One of the newest takes is that Apollo 11 was staged on the moon. According to these posts, India's Chandrayaan mission found a Hollywood grade film set still intact up there, complete with continuity errors. Apparently, even the moon dust forgot its lines.
So we didn't fake it on Earth in a studio. We had to fly to the moon to shoot the fake footage. That's commitment to the bit.
Yeah. Some Redditors claim NASA's spacewalk footage is fake because of bubbles in suits. So the conclusion is that all astronaut spacewalks are actually filmed underwater in giant pools. NASA recreated space in water. It's like the world's most expensive scuba movie set.
If that's true, NASA should release bloopers, people trying to swim in zero gravity in flippers.
And of course, the classic, my uncle worked for NASA and here's what he really said. One version is a physics PhD telling his nephew, kid, if you knew how many people it takes to fake something like that,
Nothing screams secret cover up like a Reddit post from someone whose uncle definitely worked there.
on r/flat earth, someone once claimed the entire International Space Station is fake, even if you see it through a telescope or it passes around the sun. They said it's all made up, despite some amateur astronomer agreeing they see it every few nights.
Telescopes are part of the conspiracy, maybe?
And while not strictly NASA, you can't do an internet conspiracy segment without mentioning reptilians, shape shifting lizard overlords allegedly controlling world governments, including anything to do with space exploration. Thanks, David Icke.
Yep, lizard people. Hologram moons, underground spacewalk sets, and ancient alien satellites that forgot to check the warranty.
And before NASA gets too worried, the agency actually invited people to share their craziest theories during a hashtag Ask NASA Halloween livestream, just for fun, showing even they know space conspiracies are often hilarious. Or maybe a easy way to find whoever is closer to the truth and make that disappear. Just saying.
So, whether you think NASA faked everything, hid everything, or accidentally created a sentient hologram moon that judges us every night, there's a corner of the internet ready to tell you you're right.
And that's why conspiracy culture is fun. It ranges from plausible to gloriously bonkers. But sometimes the bonkers ones end up being true too. So it's always good to question both sides of every coin.
All right, ready for the closing because we're winding this cosmic carnival down with the real, the weird, and the strangely human side of all this.
Alright, listeners, we've launched rockets, dodged cosmic toasted ovens, nuked space, stared at occult tombstones, checked some off the internet's NASA theories.
We've seen Nazis, magic, radiation bouts, gravity conspiracies, holographic moons, underwater spacewalks, and somehow it all threads together into one giant cosmic weirdness.
Exactly. NASA is part history, part science, part theater, part genuine horror story. And we missed a big chunk of it because to fully dive into NASA, we need a 72-hour long stream. But maybe at some point in the future, we will revisit it and get to the whistleblowers' testimonies and others. But today was just an introduction to the crazy foundation of it.
So, what's the takeaway? Question everything, laugh a lot, and remember some conspiracies are real, some are ridiculous, and some are deliciously in between.
If you want more of the deep, dark, and hilarious conspiracies, check out our Patreon.
Our tier 2 tinfoil hat level and above get conspiracies around the world. The first episode on Spanish soil is out today. Tier 3 have access to the crazy deep dive on Plum Island, which might or may not have involved Nazi scientists also. That's all I'm saying. This is an episode no one should miss. Just intelligence agencies, they can miss it for sure. And Lizard Supreme Royalty, you get to vote on the next wild topic we deep dive into.
And speaking of the next episode, get ready to leave Earth behind. Literally, next week on Mindzilla, we're diving into ancient Sumeria, the first cities, the secret gods, and the idea that these ancient civilizations may have known more about the cosmos than we ever imagined.
Yes, we'll be exploring the weird, the mythical, and the potentially mind bending origins of human civilization. Expect alien connections, hidden texts, and plenty of laughs.
So for now, stay curious, stay weird, and if you happen to see the moon floating a little higher than usual, maybe it's just reminding you of Von Braun's tombstone, or maybe 7 seconds of gravity are coming soon.
Either way, keep your tinfoil hats on, your telescopes ready, and your sense of humor intact.
Thanks for joining us on this cosmic conspiratorial and occasionally absurd journey through NASA's past. If you want to know our stance on the moon landing, you can visit our early episode on the moon landing or ask us in the comments.
Until next week, keep looking up and question everything.
Mindzilla signing off. Bye!